So we discussed the elements of professionalism, and we are saying there are four major elements of professionalism that we consider as for the profession of engineering. They are interlinked, so you may not have one and lack the other, and then you still say you are professional. The engineer defines the elements of professionalism as consisting of competence, integrity, public obligation, and responsibility and accountability. The last one is like intertwined, so they are considered as one, and therefore we are going to look at one at a time. And so we start with competence, and we say that competence is demonstrating relevant, up-to-date knowledge and capabilities in a given area. So it is not necessarily technical, like mathematics too much, but it's the ability to show understanding of the general area of the profession that you are practicing, such that you are able to communicate clearly, you are able to understand the roles of engineering in business. You are also able to show some leadership skills, particularly in management, such that you are going, as an engineer, you can always be relied upon and be called competent by the virtue that you meet most of these skill sets that are required for you to be considered competent. So you must have some up-to-date knowledge and know-how on what is happening in a given area, such that if we are talking about engineering as it is today, and some products that we are having, you are not going to be defining some 1992 products that you think are better than the ones that are today. So you are supposed to show that from over time, we have adjusted what we used to have earlier on, and you are demonstrating the up-to-date knowledge, such that, for instance, if you are in an office and you require the use of computing devices, you are not going to insist on using the typewriter, which has already been overtaken by events, and now we are using some smart boards or smart keyboards, and even soft, and in comparison to the old typewriters that were there from 1980s and 1990s. So what we are saying is that you must always demonstrate relevant and up-to-date knowledge and capabilities in your area of practice. And therefore, you must also be able to communicate with your peers, your customers, and even those who are above you in terms of leadership and management. We are also saying that as a competent person, you should have a broader foundation of relevant experience and understanding. Therefore, you should demonstrate that over time, as you practice in engineering, there is some experience you have gathered, and therefore you understand the bulk of the requirements of what your work entails. And for that reason, you are going to be, when you attain this, you are going to be considered to be competent. And of course, for you to attain competence, you must also demonstrate the minimum qualifications. So we cannot call you an engineer unless you have your graduate registration, or rather, unless you have qualified as an engineer. At least that allows you to build up your competence. So you cannot start fighting to get some of these lower cadre skill set, like knowledge and up-to-date knowledge and capabilities and communication, when you have not got the minimum qualifications, like graduating with a degree, registering with the ABK, among others. So we are saying that this competence encompasses all these skills, and you may not have one and lack the other, and then still say you are competent. And therefore, you must also demonstrate some continuous professional development, that you don't stop where you started, like or where you finished. Like you have graduated after 5 years, and then you say you are never going to look at any textbook again. You are never going to add any other knowledge apart from what you learned in school. If you don't do that, then you are going to end up being incompetent in your profession, and for that reason, you may not deliver in your capacity as an engineer. So that, in very many words, like I have used, encompasses that one element of competence. And now we jump to element of competence, which is called the integrity. And we define this as a clear commitment to abide by a code of ethics which are recognized and administered by the professional community. So I know most of you have heard of building collapsing, and that is quite common nowadays, probably in Kenya, because of people following some shortcuts and not keeping the code of ethics that have been defined by the professional body that registers engineers. So it is definitely important that as an engineer, you not only show competence, but you also show integrity. And therefore, you know that there are rules that have been set apart to be followed by engineers. The buildings are designed and mostly by the civil engineers and architects. And the civil engineers, therefore, must follow the code of ethics. Like, you don't follow some shortcuts when you are building, like the pillar for supporting a building. So most of the pillars, okay, particularly the story buildings, are defined by how high they are going to go. So the higher they go, the stronger the pillar should be. And therefore, don't say that this owner of this building is complaining they don't have enough money to build this building, and because they have given you some corrupt money to overlook the required dimensions of your pillar, and then you say, after all, I know it can still work. So you somehow overlook what has been set up by the professional body of engineers. So it is such practices that causes problems to arise when you have when probably buildings and structures are going on. And therefore, it is because of lack of integrity and you end up being corrupt that you have failed in that test of professionalism. So now, in terms of engineering, you might end up seeing that buildings require to have, I think the easiest one I talk about is that I told you that any building is supplied with wiring, and like we have lighting, we are going to have a bulb somewhere, we have some sockets that are going to be powering your devices. And then if you're going to be using like cooker, some of you may know it, others don't know it. Cooker is one of the highest consumers of power in a homestead. And therefore, if you are told by you as an engineer, you recommend that the minimum wire that should supply your the cooker socket should be probably 6 millimeters, and then you say, I know that even the 4 millimeter can work. Other technicians are saying that it has worked before. And therefore, you don't follow the guidelines that have been set for having the minimum of 6 millimeter wiring for a cooker. Then, as an engineer who is tasked to oversee the building in terms of physical wiring and specifications, then you're going to have failed the task or the element of integrity. So that is what entails the integrity, and we can now jump to elements of professionalism. That is the third one, which is responsibility and accountability, in which case we say that it's a set of personal obligations and responsibilities which sit alongside the contractual obligations to an employer or client. And number two, we have a matching accountability, which is also separate from that of an employer. So in few words, we are saying that as an engineer, you have an obligation to honor your responsibilities and to practice, to advise your customer to practice as an engineer with the minimum code of ethics that we have said you have set apart. So everyone is given some responsibility, and therefore you must be accountable to what you have designed. For instance, you have designed some electrical structure, and then in your design you are not able to get the proper design, and therefore it should be your responsibility to seek advice, seek help from senior engineers, and seek clarifications from those who are in a better know-how, so that in case what you have designed crumbles, you will be responsible. You'll be held responsible to the letter on everything that you did. And therefore, you cannot say that this structure failed because I was not given enough manpower, I was not given enough support by the management, etc. You should, particularly if you are probably designing a structure and then your boss says that we cannot afford to build with that cost, probably you have said your cost might be 10 million. And then you present your design to the boss and you are convinced that that is the minimum cost that your structure can cost. And then you present it to your boss, and then the boss says, we can't go with that design. We need you to minimize this cost. probably 7 million, so that this the 3 other million goes to someone's pocket. So in that case, you must always start, whether it is your boss or whether it is your customer who says that they cannot afford that kind of a cost. You tell them that you are solely responsible for the design, and that is the minimum it can go. If you have done your mathematics properly and you know that you have followed the due guidelines, you must stand up as a responsible engineer to defend what you have designed. And therefore, because if you agree to this kind of a design, and after you have built up your structure, it fails, the body of regulation or even the government will not go to your boss. It will go to you as an engineer, because you are the one who designed. So you must always stand up, because you are purely responsible for your designs and for the work that you have been entrusted on. Because engineering is a huge task, it's a huge profession that it requires you to start for what is right and avoid all shortcuts that you might be tempted to pass by. And therefore, you must show accountability. Like if the worst happens and the building or the structure collapses or your wiring has failed, then you are going to be held accountable for whatever you have done. So that is what you're saying, that you must know that you are responsible and accountable to all the tasks that has been committed to you, and therefore you must practice them with competence and integrity. And the last elements of professionalism that you're going to be discussing is that of public obligation. And you're saying that you have regard and contribution to the public good. You must protect the public interest. You are socially responsible, and you must always show commitment and contribution to the professional community. So it is like a set of professionalism that you must demonstrate. Like, I told you the bosses that you might work under might want to follow shortcuts and cause harm to public, probably by building a structure or by causing fire. Most of the fires that you see, they are attributed to some electrical fault. So this electrical fault normally comes because someone made an error in their design. And therefore, you as an engineer, you must always know that you have an obligation to public to protect them, keep them safe, and keep them from any harm or any errors that must come. So if you make errors right, left, and center in your design, then you will have failed in your public obligation, because it is your responsibility to keep your public safe. You must always have the public interest at heart, and you must know that society depends on you, so that even in your designs, you are not making things just make more money or to make ends meet. Know that you are designing for the entirety of the society, the public, and even the professional community. Therefore, even when you represent other engineers, they're going to be proud of your work, because you have demonstrated that you are competent and you can be relied upon in the delivery of your work that has been entrusted. So these are the 4 elements of professionalism. They are like they summarizes many subsets of traits or characteristics that you as an engineer must have. But in few words, if you are going to be asked, you must at least mention these 4 because they somehow encompass most of the characteristics that we engineers should possess.